Okay. Now I want to ask you this question. You spoke about it earlier. The cannabis real estate, not real estate investment trust, cannabis REIT. Tell us about that. Do you think cannabis is on the brink of being legalized on a federal level? And tell us about this cannabis REIT that you were talking about earlier.
Well, actually, what's interesting, Prince, is there's one company we cover, and they just announced earnings today, called Innovative Industrial. And their ticker symbol, if you want to do some research, their ticker symbol is IIPR. They were the first cannabis REIT. We call that the first mover advantage. So they got in early. They built a very large base. They launched a couple of years ago. I forget the date, but it was at least, say, 4 to 5 years ago. And they have grown, and I use this a lot, play on words, pun intended. They have growing like a weed. And so, that was the first mover. They're growing at a rate of about 35% per year. Now, that's their earnings growth mode historically, and then what we see is the forecast. So they were the first out. Now we've had a couple other companies that have listed as cannabis REITs. We have one is a mortgage REIT called AFC Gamma, and I don't know who came up with the name, but that's it, AFC Gamma. They're based down in West Palm Beach, and I actually met with them a couple of weeks back, and we just initiated coverage on them. Then we have two other traditional equity REITs, which means they own the brick and mortar. And so one of them is a really small company called Power REIT. Their ticker symbol is PW. They're actually a nano cap. So a nano cap means they have a market cap of under 100 million, but they've done extremely well. Now it's high, as you know, it's higher risk to invest in these small caps or nano caps. There's a lot of volatility with those companies, but there are now actually 4 companies in that space. Now you hit the nail on the head, Prince, is the safe banking laws, the big overhang for this cannabis sector is at some point in time in the future, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when the federal laws change and the safe banking laws are formed, then it's going to basically allow the federally chartered banks to lend money. Well, you're in Denver, so you know this well because you've got a pro-cannabis state. But you're going to see these banks open up, and they will actually be able to lend money. Now, is that going to how is that going to impact these REITs? Because right now the REITs are taking advantage of this opportunity because there's really relatively not many firms that will invest in these larger cannabis facilities. But we believe, and we've talked to these management teams quite a bit, Prince, we believe that even with those laws, that these companies like IIPR, Innovative Industrial, will still be able to generate very attractive double-digit returns. And so, I think it's here to stay. I mean, obviously, we know cannabis is still exploding, but I think the elephant in the room is when those safe laws do go in the books. How will that impact some of these REITs? And again, we feel fairly favorable. But again, this is somewhat of I always like to warn, investors, especially beginners. I mean, cannabis is still an early innings asset class. And so there's a lot of volatility. So obviously, if you're going to invest in those types of companies, you always need to make sure you manage or maintain adequate diversification and invest in some more stable property sectors as well as cannabis. But we like cannabis a lot. I will say, I'll look right now because I've got my screen open here. The cannabis REITs were one of our top performing REITs. Power REIT was up like 83% year to date, for example, and just really Innovative is that they did like 80% this year. They did like in the year of a pandemic. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but this is amazing that they returned something like 80 to 90% in the year of a global pandemic, which is crazy. But anyway, cannabis is definitely a hot sector, and I think it's going to continue to be interesting, but I would definitely maintain diversification.
All right. Now we're going to jump into this real quick. We're going to bring up the cover of your book.